So on today's episode, I want to talk about how I find the records that I want at a reasonable price. So let's dive into it, shall we? So hey there and welcome back to Sonic Safari, a channel featuring tales of record collecting. I am your host Marcus, a Swedish hipster lost in the fog in San Francisco. So last week we talked about Gilles Peterson and how one man opened up a world of wonderful rare music to me. So if you haven't checked out that video yet, please do. I really enjoyed making it. For now, let's go buy some vinyl. Okay, so I get it. It might sound a bit silly as exchanging goods for services isn't really something that needs explaining, but what I wanted to talk about in this video is really how I navigate the avalanche of releases and the outlets where you can get them to find the records that I want at a price and a quality that I feel comfortable with. But before we jump into that, please like and subscribe. It helps me more than you think. So there are basically 5 ways that I buy my records, and the first one is in a record store. Big surprise, right? And I do make an effort to buy most of my records in local independently owned record stores because I do think that we have to support the type of community we want to live in. And I want record stores around, so I make an effort to buy most of my records there if I can. Now, I get it. I am very, very lucky to live in an area where between San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley, there are tons of great record stores around. And not everyone has this luxury, but even living here, it can be tempting to just get a record on Amazon and have it the next day at your house. But I do resist the urge. So if you know anything about record stores and San Francisco, you probably assume I go to Amoeba Records in The Hague, and I do. I actually used to live only a couple of blocks away, so I was there all the time. And don't get me wrong, Amoeba is a great store and you should definitely go. However, I must say that there are other stores that I prefer in the San Francisco area, and maybe in part it is the size. So if you haven't been to Amoeba Record, it is massive, which of course can be a good thing. They have tons of records there. But it can also mean that it is a bit overwhelming to go through it all. And I would also say that especially lately, it's getting harder and harder to find those real gems of rare records. Maybe the store just has too much foot traffic coming into it. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you can't find these amazing records every now and then. And this is a great example. So this is PJ Harvey's Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea from 2000. And this one I found right as she was reissuing her entire discography. So I just picked it up without thinking too much about it. Came home and realized that this is actually a original UK pressing. This one goes for hundreds of dollars and I picked it up for 25 bucks. So this was a pretty sweet find. And this is her best album in my opinion. All the songs here are amazing, just perfect indie rock. So if you haven't listened to it, please do. So my favorite record store by far in San Francisco is Tunnel Records, which is out at Ocean Beach. They have a great stock of new and used records. They specialize in Japanese pressings and the staff is just very friendly. So I love going to that place. And one of my favorite pickups from this store is this one. So this is Bill Evans' New Jazz Conceptions. And it was originally released in 1957. And this is a Japanese reissue from 1975. And this is the first record that Bill Evans did as a band leader on Riverside. Everything about this record is great. I love that cover. The OB looks fantastic. And of course, the music is great. So I'm super happy to have this record. So when I don't buy from local, independently owned record stores, I try to buy from the labels themselves directly, and I find that the newsletter is the best way to stay on top of what's coming out. My favorite ones are Blue Note for the Tone Poet Classic Series, Barely Breaking Even, which is great for jazz and rare groove records and compilations, and Mr. Bongo for eclectic soul funk and jazz music, as they have some amazing reissues. So as an example, I picked this record up from Mr. Bongo, and this is Did You Give the World Some Love Today, Baby by Doris, and Doris is the name of the singer. This was originally released in 1970, and what I find really interesting about this record, which is not only that wonderful cover, is that all the arrangements are made by 2 very famous Swedish jazz musicians, while the singer is more of a pop singer. So the result is a very kind of swinging, proggy, jazzy sound to this record. It's hard to put your finger on it, but you should listen to the title track and you probably understand what I mean. In some cases, I also follow bands I enjoy directly on their websites to not miss out on any future releases, like Big Thief or Radiohead, for example. In the case of The National, I am also part of their fan club, which is called Cherry Tree. This club gives you access to releases before the general public, and they also release one vinyl record a year called Cherry Tree, and this is volume 3 right here. This was a live recording made in Austin, Texas in 2018, and the quality of the record is really good. The sound is pretty impressive for being a live recording. The price is a bit elevated if you ask me, but fan clubs can be something to consider if you're looking for vinyl records of your favorite band. So next up we have Discogs, and if you don't know Discogs, it's a great tool for a record collector, as you can log your collection, get a notion of the value of your records, and it's a marketplace where you can buy and sell records. So I did a more in-depth video about Discog a couple of weeks ago, and it's basically a wish list of the things that I would like to see change on the platform. Having said that, my experience buying records on Discog has overall been a positive experience, and I would recommend you using it if you haven't already. I find that most sellers are pretty good at grading their records, and most of them are open to negotiate the price, as to be honest, most of them put a high price to see if it flies to begin with. So on Discog, I bought this record, which is the sounds from the Verve Hi-Fi, which is compiled by the Thievery Corporation. It came out in 2002. It's a 2-disc set on this gatefold. And this is basically a deep dive into the Verve discography, focusing on bossa nova, Latin, and jazzy vibes. So this is the perfect record to listen to next to the pool, if you happen to have one, that is. So overall, I would say that buying on Discog is a positive experience, or have been for me at least. And the one tip I would give is to check out the reviews of the seller before you buy something. And if these reviews are good, then I can trust it more. So next up we have Acoustic Sound, which I have to admit I use quite a lot. If you're not aware of Acoustic Sound, it was founded by Chad Kassem in Salinas, Kansas. And what started as a mail order business of vinyl records that Chad bought when everyone was moving to CD has now grown to include a reissue label, Analog Productions, which has close to 300 titles in print and is of highest quality, both sound and packaging, as well as a pressing plant, Quality Record Pressings, or QRP. So anything Mr. Kassem is involved with, you know it's going to be good quality. So the one thing I would say about the Analog Production reissues is that they are great, but they do have a very long backlog. So sometimes when you buy something, you might have to wait 6 months or a year, but it is worth the wait if you ask me. So the very first record that I bought on Analog Production is this one. So this is Art Taylor's 80s Delight, originally released in 1960, and it was only a record as a band leader for Blue Note, and he plays with Stanley Turrentine on sax and Wynton Kelly on piano, and everything about this record is just perfection. It sounds amazing, and I'm super happy to have it. So last but not least, I do also pick up record from Vinyl Me Please, and I did a more in-depth video about this service. But in a nutshell, I find that I have stopped using it for the Vinyl of the Month subscription service that it really is, and instead use the swap for credit feature and use it when they release exclusive pressings, which they do more and more often. So an example of a record I picked up on Vinyl Me Please would be this one from Canadian indie rockers Stars, and this is Set Yourself on Fire from 2004, and this was limited to 1,000, and I have number 648, and it comes on this clear fire style splatter, which looks pretty cool if you ask me. And this is a great record. You should listen to the song Your Ex-Lover Is Dead. Absolutely fantastic. All right, so that's it. Those are the 5 ways that I buy my records. So I would love to hear from you. What do you think, and where do you buy your records? Please let me know in the comments below. All right, so that's it for today's episode. Please like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. On the next episode, I'm going to take you on a road trip, and we're going to go to Oakland, California to do some record digging. Until then, tack och adjö.